at the end of a life, what really matters most? We're about to hear from a man who, on his deathbed back in 1850, gathered his family to answer that exact question. This is the story of Jonathan White and the legacy he wanted to build with his very last words. So I want you to picture this. We're on a farm on a place called Chestnut Hill. The air is quiet. A man, Jonathan White, he knows his time is almost up. And his family, his wife Miranda, their children Henry, Albert, and Harriet, they've all gathered around his bed. And with those words, Jonathan starts to speak. But he's not just telling old stories. No, he's very carefully building a bridge from his own life to theirs, trying to make sure the values he lived by wouldn't just disappear. And he starts right at the beginning, with the challenges that made him who he was.
See, Jonathan's story doesn't begin with comfort or ease. It starts with a huge loss, something that would end up shaping the entire course of his life. He was just 11. Think about that. At 11 years old, his father, Humphrey, passed away. And just like that, his mother was left to raise 10 children all on her own. Can you even imagine the weight of that moment?
But here's the thing. Jonathan didn't just frame this as a tragedy. For him, it was a crucible. It was the moment he learned his first and maybe his most important lesson about what life is all about.
He watched his mother, Sybil, somehow manage the impossible. He learned from his older brothers, Benjamin and David, who had to step up and teach him how to work, how to be a man. He grew up fast because he had no choice, and he learned right then that family meant you shoulder the responsibility together.
And that incredible sense of responsibility, well, it became the foundation of his character. It shaped the kind of man he'd become, the man who would go on to build a family of his own. And for Jonathan, that family truly began and ended with his partner, his wife, Miranda. He was just 19 when he married Miranda. Soon after, their son Henry was born, then Albert, and later on they got a welcome surprise in their daughter, Harriet. Now you can see the dates here on this timeline, but what they really represent is the slow, steady construction of a life, built piece by piece, together. And this was the heart of his message for his kids. For Jonathan, his marriage and his life's work, they were the same thing. It was never his farm or his success. It was always, always theirs. That idea, that ideal of a true partnership was the bedrock of absolutely everything he built. But, you know, partnerships get tested. And for Jonathan and Miranda, their biggest test came when he made the call that they had to leave everything and everyone they knew behind. And this just lays out the choice they were facing so perfectly. On one hand, you have Rhode Island. That's home. It's family, memories, the comfort of the known, the graves of their ancestors. But on the other hand, you've got Connecticut. The promise of better land, a better future for their kids, but a total leap into the unknown. And here we get to hear from Miranda. Her words just capture it all. The heartbreak of leaving, but also that deep, profound trust that really defined their partnership. It was that trust that let them take that huge leap together.
So this brings us to Jonathan's final thoughts. He shared his past, the good and the bad. And now he's trying to boil down a whole lifetime of experience into wisdom he can pass on.
For Jonathan, you see, farming wasn't just a job. It was a philosophy for living. It taught him patience, it taught him foresight, and it taught him that fundamental truth that you will always reap what you sow. He saw the rhythms of his own life in the turning of the seasons on his farm. And out of that philosophy, he came up with this simple but really powerful code. This was his moral compass. Number 1, earn it. You work honestly for what you get. 2, be fair. No shortcuts, no cheating. 3, be honorable. You always pay your debts. And 4, learn. Every single mistake is a chance to get better. This is the core of what he wanted his kids to carry with them. And his final instructions were so personal. To his sons, he begged them, stay close, take care of this family. To his daughter Harriet, and this is incredible for 1850, he told her she was just as capable as any man. And to his wife Miranda, he just reaffirmed her strength and their amazing partnership. He even gave them one last, really practical piece of advice. Make your wishes clear now, so that conflict doesn't tear this family apart later. And this was his final point, the thing it all came down to. The farm, the land. Sure, those are the things you can touch that he'd leave behind, but his real legacy, The inheritance he knew would truly last forever was invisible. It was the values they had all lived by: hard work, honesty, and loyalty to your family.
Jonathan White was a farmer. He lived a simple life, but he was so incredibly intentional about the meaning he was leaving behind. His story reaches from that deathbed in 1850 all the way to us today, and it asks a question that's not about what we own, but about what we value. So it leaves us with this to think about. What legacy are you building?